welcome to the Sydney DevOps Meetup, our online one for July. I am Lindsay and my co-organizer Michael is somewhere lurking in the background there. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the country throughout Australia, which in my case is the Darkinjung people, and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture. We will pay our respects to their elders past and present. Sovereignty has never been ceded and treaties have never been signed. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So, as I said, welcome to the July meetup. It's lovely to have you all here. We're all in. I'm assuming that for the folks that are Sydney and New South Wales bound, we're probably all in lockdown, and well, now the folks down in Victoria as well. So lovely to have you all here and break up the boredom a little bit. We've got a great talk tonight from DeveloperSteve. I've got a thing about code of conduct. Let's do that next. So. Just a quick reminder on the code of conduct here. We don't tolerate harassment of meetup participants in any form. All communication should be appropriate for a professional audience. And please remember that harassment and sexist, racist, and exclusionary jokes are not appropriate at DevOps Sydney. And one of the tiny blessings of doing meetups online is that it's really easy to kick people if they're being dickheads. So I haven't needed to do that yet, but the technology is there. We have the power. So tonight, it's a pretty short meetup. Trying to do things in bite-sized chunks at the moment. People, I know definitely towards the sort of end of last year, people were really throwing themselves into online events, and I think there's a lot of fatigue, a little bit of online event burnout. So people seem to be taking it a bit slow at the moment, which is good because, there's the whole world and the pandemic and everything going on. So you've just got to do things at a sustainable, manageable pace. So we've got the intro, which is the thing that I'm doing now. We're going to roll into a quick events and jobs. Normally we do that in the middle of the meetup, but because it's a bit briefer tonight, we're just going to jump straight into it. And then we've got the main talk, which is from Steve, as I mentioned just before, which I'm going to give a prelude to in a second. So quick reminder on the way the job section works. If you are looking to fill a position, either you are hiring at the moment or are looking to be hired, feel free to pop a note in the chat here. Just give me a bit of a heads up that you are going to talk. So you'll have 30 seconds to either talk about the role or talk about yourself and the sort of thing that you're looking for in a new role. And we're going to do that in a minute or two. So if you're keen to talk about a job, feel free to pop that in the chat now. The main talk that we have tonight is from DeveloperSteve. As I've mentioned a couple of times, we've got the secure app development with AWS CodePipelines. Big shout out to Steve for jumping in. We're relatively last moment to be able to give this talk. Definitely been a lot of interest in it in the week or so that it's been up on the meetup page. So really excited to see this tonight. So quick show of hands, either with or without the camera, and the little reactions in Zoom and whatnot. Who here is at the meetup for the first time? I see one hand. We've got Jackson. Lovely to have you here, Jackson. And one there from Chow. Dwight Walker. We've got a Peter Barber. Fantastic. Well, it's lovely to have all of you here for the first time. Normally, we ask how far away people have come from, but this being in a pandemic has sort of leveled it quite significantly because it used to be sort of wild if we had people from, interstate or other countries, but now that's just like a regular meetup that we do. Is there anybody that is joining us from outside of Sydney today? Feel free to pop it in the chat. Hey, we've got Joe that's coming in from Bully. That's great. Caboolture in Queensland. We've got Mary coming in from New Zealand. Fantastic. New South Wales country, West Coast. Oh, we've got Glenn coming in from Perth. Fantastic. So we've got folks from all over Australia, which is great to see, and New Zealand. Anybody further afield than Australia and New Zealand tonight? Occasionally we have an international guest or two. Oh, wow. We've got Mukhtar coming in from Sierra Leone. Wow, I don't think we've ever had anybody from Sierra Leone at the meetup. Well, it's really fantastic to have you here. I don't know what time of day it is over there. I'm assuming it's morning-ish. So well, thanks for starting your day right by coming to the meetup here. All right, let's roll into it then. So for the main talk, we've got that, which I'll get to in a second. One other bit of administrativa. We're just going to continue doing the online meetups until 2022. I was actually intending on doing an in-person meetup this month. And technically, I was intending on doing it last month, but didn't quite come together. And then, with the whole lockdown, sort of difficult to do an in-person meetup now. Yeah, we're just going to keep doing this probably indefinitely until, probably till the borders open, which with the current rollout of the vaccine here in Australia, who knows when that will be. If you're here now, you know how to come back, and we're just going to keep doing these online for the next little while. There's one question there in the chat about, may I ask where the recorded meetups are uploaded? So typically we upload them to YouTube, and I'll post them as a comment on the meetup event within a couple of days. I'll try to do it within 24 hours. Don't quite always get there. But yeah, that's where you'll be able to find it in the recordings of the talks. No worries. So let's just jump into events actually quickly before we do the jobs. So we've got a DevOps Days that's going to be happening in October 28th, 29th down in Melbourne. Fingers crossed, the various restrictions will lift and we'll all be able to get there in one form or another. If you haven't been to a DevOps Days event, they're absolutely fantastic. So it's 2 days. The first half of the day is structured talks, and the second half of the day is open spaces. And so in the open spaces, you can network with your peers. You can put out different topics that you want to talk about, and go along to the different sessions and share your experiences and ask questions of people that have solved similar problems. So they're a really fantastic conference. Definitely the highlight of the DevOps community here in Australia. So if you can get along to that, I highly recommend that you do. There are DevOps Days that are happening internationally as well for our international folks that are joining. But to be honest, I am not paying attention to anything that is happening outside of Australia right now. So best place to check for that is devopsdays.org, and you can see all the different international events if there's anything nearby to you. All right, that's all I've got for events. I foreshadowed that we were going to do a quick thing about jobs. So anybody that is keen to talk about a position that they're hiring for, or talk about themselves to get hired somewhere, feel free to unmute yourself and go for it.
I'm a system administrator. I use Bash and PHP, Perl, Ruby, C. So yeah, I'm interested in the outsourcing. Yeah, so looking for some work. I do mainly servers, but mainly with Linux. Yeah.
And what's the best way for people to contact you, Dwight?
I can put my email in the chat, or I can put let's put my email in here. That'll do. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. All right. Anybody else looking for a job or looking to hire at the moment? Okay, take it away.
Hey guys, this is I'm Jairam from Sydney. So, well, I'm a beginner with DevOps, so I'm just trying to get into the DevOps stream. Just done with my AWS Solution Architect certification, and I've got some scripting experience with Python and Shell. So yeah, keen to get into something just to start get into DevOps. Yeah, so I'll drop in my email as well in the chat, so if there's anything for me.
Brilliant. All right, and also feel free, both Jay and Dwight, to drop something in the comments on the meetup event as well, so people can find you after the event, just in case they don't grab it in the chat.
Sure, thanks.
No worries. All right, anybody else looking for work or looking to hire?
Hey, good morning, everyone. Mukhtar, I'm from Sierra Leone. So I'm a beginner in DevOps. In my company that I work presently, I'm just like a part-time worker. I'm working as a system administrator, but I'm looking forward to transform to the DevOps field. So I'll be interested in an intern position, or maybe part-time position where I could gain experience and advance my skills.
Fantastic. And Mukhtar, what's the best way for people to contact you?
I'll drop my email at the comment section.
Fantastic. I hope you're able to find something. And thank you for getting up early to join us as well. It's like you said, it's 8 in the morning there. So starting your day right.
Yeah.
Brilliant. All right. Anybody else before we move on to the main talk for tonight? All right. Last call. Going. Gone. All right. In which case, I am going to hand over to not Avishai. I don't know how that slide got in there. I'm going to go back a couple. I'm going to hand over to DeveloperSteve to talk about secure app development with AWS CodePipelines. I'm going to relinquish the screen, and Steve, feel free to share.
Yay. Hello, everyone. Let me just choose the right screen. Hopefully you can all see that okay.
It's looking great.
Sweet. I'm going to minimize my Zoom for now, but I'll check back into the chat in a little bit. And thank you all for joining. Particularly thank you for joining from Sierra Leone. Amazing. And I love that, like, in this virtual world now, anyone can join anywhere. Like, it's great having all these people just connect and be able to, well, just connect without having all the flights and all the things that we used to do in the time before, which is how I describe it. Before we get underway, I'd also like to pay my respects and acknowledgements to the traditional owners on the lands in which we meet, including a heartfelt respect and acknowledgement to the Waganga people, who are the traditional owners on the lands here in Narromine, which is 30 minutes from Dubbo and about 7 hours from Sydney and about 4.5 hours, give or take, from Canberra, for those that aren't familiar. From international friends that have joined tonight. Just before we get underway too, I know we have got a few first timers here that are looking to learn stuff and pick up new skills, learn DevOps techniques, etc. I just want to say, like, connecting to groups like this are always amazing because you always learn something new. Like, I've been doing meetups and conferences, talks, like, for many, many years, and you always learn something new or meet someone amazing and just geek out. And it's that sharing that, well, our entire industry is based on that. That is kind of the open source world as a whole. So anyway, I won't go on about that anymore because I could literally spend the entire time talking about that and how amazing the open source world is, but you all know that anyway because you're all amazing. But yeah, anyway, getting back on track, thank you all for joining. Now, for those that I haven't met before, this is the disclaimer slide where I'm going to say I have a whole bunch of developer jokes. So that was the disclaimer. Actually, I should put an animation on here with like an asterisk disclaimer on here. Totally doing that for the next talk. And tonight's no exception. I always love starting with these. These are open source, so please share it because, like, we need to keep laughing and smiling in the current times. Anyway, without further ado, because I have hyped it up a whole lot now, why did the vulnerability get tired? And I can feel the face palms already because the answer is because it ransomware. Anyway, I might have a few more of these planned throughout the session, but yeah, you won't get any heads up, it'll just happen. So anyway, hello, for those that I haven't met before, I am DeveloperSteve. I am a senior developer advocate for a company called Sneak. We do a whole bunch of security stuff. I'm going to get into that. But previously, I'm also ex-PayPal Braintree, Xero, which is the accounting company, Telstra, the Australian telecommunications company, and 3 months ago left IBM to join Sneak. As a dev advocate, I get to come and geek out and tell all the amazing jokes. No, with groups like yourselves, and just work closely with developer groups. I mean, as a dev, like a DevOps person, an IoTist, and many other things, I just love geeking out and just sharing knowledge and, well, just geeking out, learning new things myself, and sharing what I know with everyone else. Because again, that's kind of what it's all based on. Quick fun fact, DeveloperSteve is actually part of my legal name, which is still a little weird to me, but I mean, I did it because I filled out the form, but a few years ago I got married, and so actually that's one of the pictures there. I actually 3D printed the top of that cake the night before my wedding because I like to live dangerously sometimes. Thankfully there was no fire. How did it mobile number? Anyway, I digress. We decided to combine our last names. So Cooper plus Houchin became Kuchin. And while I was legally changing my name, I was like, you know what? Everyone just calls me DeveloperSteve anyway. So I'm going to make it my middle name. Well, I'm going to see if I can make it my middle name. Turns out you can. So there you go. Funny story. So I've been a developer since the age of 8, even if I didn't want to admit it, but that's a whole other story. But yeah, back when I first started coding, and I'm totally going to show my age, but it was on an Atari 800 XL, when the 5.5-inch discs, for those who remember, those were great. You couldn't put them even remotely near a magnet. Anyway, back when I first started coding, it was with QBasic, and there was no such things as libraries, dependencies. Like, open source was still I'm going to say still in its infancy. And sort of even going through my career as a developer, I spent some time in digital agency. I was actually a database analyst for many years. Seeing how the industry has emerged and matured, particularly built around these open source technologies, has been great, because even in digital agency days, like, I could take something like the code on the screen and build out an amazing app that kind of allowed people to, it affected their everyday life. They could seamlessly do that thing that was always, costing them time filling out spreadsheets, and like, I could automate their day-to-day interactions with the world or with their business. I could help bring them entertainment, literally by calling in that one library, that maybe also had some dependencies, but I could just, with a few lines of code, kind of build out a thing, or build out an application or an experience with ease, because like it enabled me to speed up my development time. As a dev, the one thing I've always been curious about is, like, what's this doing to the stack underneath? And even going through sort of getting involved in building out DevOps infrastructure over the years. And like, back in my digital agency days, that was a while ago now. It was over 10 years ago. But yeah, building out DevOps, or building out my own infrastructure and sort of getting more into the DevOps space, that was kind of an ends to a means for me, because as a dev, I could literally deploy and build out my own sandboxes, which was great. That's like the ultimate dream. Just build your own playground. It was great. But then that sort of led down the I don't want to say rabbit hole, but down the adventure, if you will, of building out your own infrastructure, because it was so easy to do and I had full control over it. It was potentially more secure because I could control the environment more. As a dev, particularly before sort of going down and understanding what that meant on the DevOps side of things, as a dev, like, it was something I would never really give much thought to. It was just like npm install that thing, or hey, let's grab that code from Stack Overflow because that solves my problem at 3 a.m. and deploy that because it looks like it's going to work, with little understanding of what I was actually deploying. And so something that's probably no surprise to anyone really, because is that the open source ecosystems are exponentially growing year on year. And so often what we see, particularly in the open source world, is like one particular package will start out as like one big library that just continually gets things added into it. Sometimes that'll split off and create its own library, which is then used by several others as a dependency. Like, we see this exponential growth in the overall ecosystem. If you think even npm or Composer, which is PHP world, like, we've seen so much growth in a lot of the libraries that are not only being utilized, but that are just starting to grow out of other libraries, which gets a bit better. Or even sometimes they even merge and then split into different community groups as the functionality matures or as the requirements change. And obviously down at a language level too, sometimes that will affect functionality in a lot of these dependencies and libraries as well. But it's probably no surprise too, like, with that comes vulnerabilities that start to open up into people's stacks. And this is something that has plagued me for forever. So when I was literally in digital agency world, deploying open source platforms, I won't mention any names, but there was a lot, I'm going to mention it, WordPress. There was a lot of platforms or infrastructure that I was building out that I would continually have to go back and clean, or get someone from the team to go back and clean up, because there was a vulnerability we were unaware of in the stack, be it in the infrastructure or even in the code that was being deployed, that opened something up into our stack that we didn't even know. And next minute you're having to clean up spam ads and all sorts of nasty things injected. If you think about it, like, it sort of is a bit like the iceberg you can see on the left-hand side of that slide, because the code that is publicly available, publicly exposed inside applications, inside mobile apps, etc., is literally just the tip of the iceberg, which can open up those vulnerabilities to the surface beneath, which then, of course, leads us to the second step, which is open source, etc., etc. On that note, if you are looking, and this is something I always recommend to first timers particularly, but if you are using any sort of open source library, like platform, community, or whatever, please contribute back where you can. Just always great to get involved in those open source projects. For first timers, if you are looking to build out your portfolio more, this is a great way to get close to the companies that support that particular project or those projects. And there's some very big corporates that do sponsor a lot of the more widely used platforms, etc., like IBM, a whole raft of companies. But even just contributing back by testing release candidates for particular libraries or whatnot, particularly on the vulnerability side, because often you'll see vulnerabilities get raised against these projects or against these libraries, dependencies, etc. And then there's a delay between a fix being deployed or a fix being released back into the ecosystem. Oops, why is there a click there? Anyway, totally recommend first timers get involved. And yeah, if you are using something, just please contribute back where you can, because it is ace and it is much appreciated. Thank you. That's the end of my talk. No. One thing we do find, particularly on the code side of things, and I'm going to move into infrastructure in a moment, is that up to 80% of vulnerabilities that we detect in the wild are literally let in through dependencies. So that one library, that npm install, that composer install, whatever it is, that then pulls in 1 to 15 other things to be able to do the things it does inside your code. That in itself sort of opens up doorways into your stack, literally opening up doorways into the top of that iceberg, into your stack itself. And so one of the ways we contribute back at Snyk is we have a program called Snyk Advisor, which basically helps show the metrics behind releases for a particular library, for a particular community, and then also the maintenance behind that as well. Plus, you can see a running history of vulnerabilities that have surfaced in the past, fixes that have gone into place often, and this is like literally testament to the communities that we have have as part of the program. Is we see the fixes go out fairly quickly, depending how many people get involved. Again, please get involved. And then you'll often just see an upgrade come out, an upgrade notice come out. And quite often these are tied back to the security vulnerability alerts or CVEs that are published as part of the vulnerability reporting programs a lot of the different platforms have. Something we do at Snyk is we monitor a lot of code repos too, so a lot of or applications of all different sizes. So in the actual console, you can be alerted once a fix has gone out. Sometimes we deploy our own fixes until something is patched or community has been able to get a release candidate through testing. We can have a fix published before that actually happens. But ultimately, the ongoing scanning of being able to identify those beforehand. Again, as devs or as development teams build applications to for end users, ultimately we want to keep them safe, plus protect infrastructure. Because the last thing you want, and we have seen instances of this, is someone using your infrastructure for something malicious. I have totally been there before as well. Just getting that bill at the end of the month from a cloud platform, and you're like, wait, how did we suddenly jump from an extra 70% of usage, and all of a sudden we're getting charged for it because somebody's mining Doge? Literally, probably not mining Doge, but you get my point. Like, this helps. This is one way to help protect that infrastructure as using it. We do actually help run the Node.js vulnerability reporting program. So this goes beyond the actual libraries and dependencies themselves, but also things like Docker images, for example, which we are going to look at as well. Actually, speaking of Docker, did you know there's over 242 billion downloads of Docker images to date? Yes, that is right. That is a lot of downloads. Think of that infrastructure. And I mean, that's just testament to what we see as far as digital transformation, which obviously means rapid containerized adoption, which I absolutely love, both as a dev and a DevOps. One, it makes apps more portable, so a lot easier to move around. From the development side of things, and of course on the DevOps side, it means as well, devs. See, it's literally like one half of me fighting the other one. No, it's not a fight. It's a symbiosis. Let's go with that. Literally, as a dev, one thing I really like, dev and DevOps, is being able to build stuff inside my local environment in container, and then being able to ship it out to server infrastructure that supports that. And of course, it's able to run on there as well. Of course, this is where test scripts come into play as well, but we're not covering that tonight. That is another night. One thing we do see through that rapid container adoption, though, is, of course, vulnerabilities surfacing. This is consistently year after year, we see that the top 10 Docker base images straight from the Docker Hub. So if you think that the number of billions of downloads, a lot of those carry security vulnerabilities in them straight out of the gate, which makes sense, right? Because they're literally built using those open source vulnerabilities or those open source libraries and dependencies, that open source technology that we know already has vulnerabilities in it. So of course, from a holistic iceberg scenario, you want to make sure not only your code's clean, but it's going onto clean infrastructure as well, because I mean, that just keeps everyone safe again. The Docker images pretty much always bring node vulnerabilities alongside their great value that they bring in making portable containerization possible, which is great. One way I always like to look at it, and maybe this is another one of my developer jokes, maybe it's not, but with great containerization does come great responsibility. Like, it's one thing just scanning your code once off, which you should totally be doing. Need to be not only continually scanning it, but scanning the infrastructure that it's being deployed on as well, which, as you guessed, is something we can do as well and help with, not only on the one-off scanning side, but the continual scanning as well. A lot of the times, even deployed infrastructure, you can do a security scan on the offset, but you need to be continually scanning to pick up newly reported vulnerabilities through CVE, et cetera, et cetera. So you might be thinking, how do I fix Docker vulnerabilities? The best way to do this is to rebuild an image. So start with a base minimal image and just add in the things you need building on top of it. This is highly recommended to be doing in a reiterative review process too, which is something the likes of OWASP, the OWASP Foundation, continually recommend as well, which is to review not only your infrastructure, but the components in your infrastructure, regularly, very regularly. And we see a lot of these things surface in the news all the time. Like, please make sure you're continually scanning that particular, like, your infrastructure and reviewing it, like, always totally important. More likely, in particular, to use a different base image tag. And you might be like, but what if I'm running a particular node, or what tag should I switch to? Always important to also scan your development environments or your pen testing environments as well. Make sure that those are clean first, and then deploy infrastructure from there. There's a really good blog post, and I'm going to be looking at a few examples tonight, actually, but there's a really good blog post on one of the more widely known hacks or widely known vulnerabilities that sort of exposed a whole bunch of different infrastructure, but the image magic vulnerability, which my manager, Liren Tao, did a really good write-up on and does some really good demos on as well. But this was first exposed in 2017 at Google I/O. And yeah, it was literally demoed as a Node.js app running in a live environment. Image magic, incidentally, is one of the consistent vulnerabilities that we see surface in infrastructure regularly. Like, literally, you can do what's known as a file traversal hack, which we're going to be looking at one of those tonight as a demo, which I hope will work. Totally will work. But yeah, basically means that, or the way that this particular one works is it lets you inject, or lets an end user, attacking end user, inject into your application using an image, and then being able to traverse the infrastructure and inject a file straight in, and then yeah, anyway, then all the nasty things happen. So what we're going to be doing, infrastructure, got ahead of myself. I want to get into the demo code side of things because I have some fun code. Anyway, the final part of this particular iceberg, the last part, of course, being containers, is infrastructure as code, which is what we're going to look at tonight. I do have working demo. The final part of the iceberg I wanted to mention is infrastructure as code. Code infrastructure has always been completely abstracted away in the form of code. Today, we deploy and scale resources as fast as code, which is one of the things that I love, particularly as a dev, because this starts to merge those two worlds of like the ops side of things into dev. It's the DevOps that we all know and love. But as a developer, sort of coming from a long background as a dev, this is where I get to be able to define the environments that I'm deploying into, literally through configuration files, which we're going to look at. And I have some sample code too I can share after this, so that if you want to try this at home. Although some of the demos I'm going to, oh wait, we will get into that in a second. I just want to get to the demo part of it. We're getting there. Not surprisingly, wait, there we go. The number one cloud vulnerability that is we consistently see is misconfiguration, and that's through the NSA reports that we've seen come out recently. One thing I'm not covering tonight, but is also great to look into too, is open source supply chain security, which is something governments are now even looking at. Actually, I was reading an article just today that came out from the Australian cybersecurity federal group, which was talking about IoT, enforcing IoT security, which I totally love. And I'm also a big IoT fan as well. Quite often, or something we're seeing more and more now, is being able to get into a network through deployed IoT devices in the field. So, and the way that works is, if you think like an agri-tech or a mining site deployment, a lot of the times there's a whole bunch of different IoT devices which are talking into what's known as an edge, so a deployed server unit in the field. A lot of the times now those edge devices are chained into the same network, usually with a Docker image, or sometimes with a Docker image on them. If you can get into that, basically you can get in, like it's a gateway straight in. So I actually hope there are some guidelines that start to come out, just sort of advising on the preferred way to deploy and manage devices in field. Actually, one of the most unusual vulnerabilities I saw surface last year was somebody was able to use soft drink vending machines. I was almost going to mention a brand. You can probably Google it. But yeah, using software, hijacking software on soft drink vending machines to download anime through the IoT network, the Cat1 network. I don't know why you would do that, but I mean, someone did that. So anyway, protect your IoT devices as well. But that's a talk for another night. So yeah, basically this is why we need developer first security. It always should be now starting, or it should always start at that code front, at the top of the iceberg level, but then holistically move straight through the stack as well. So scan the code and scan the infrastructure the code's going on, not once, but ongoingly as well. Anyway, this is my favorite bit because this is the code part. This is all going to work. This is all going to work fine, right? Hang on, someone's in the chat. Cyber dad jokes, yay. Open source photocopying. I just realized you're talking about, actually, I did have a book on QBasic when I was learning it. It's a very thick book, but I mean, it was QBasic. So anyway, it's going to be useful something. Yeah, I totally. Wait, you had a photocopier? Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, I'm just catching up to the chat. Anyway, let's go to the code. So first, wait, should we go to the AWS one first? No, I like the dangerous thing. Let's swap it up a bit. All right, so first up, I'm going to use, this one's kind of fun because this one, like I get to highlight one of the warnings that are on this GitHub repo. So this is one of our demos, our highly vulnerable demo from the GitHub repo, from our GitHub repo. So you can actually try this at home. Just, this comes with a caveat because please do not try this at home. I'm going to show you why. because, and it's broken image. Don't you hate that? See what can go wrong, live demos. It should refresh in a second. There we go, 57. Hey, I feel like it needs some more. Anyway, this is obviously not a production ready app, and be careful where you use it. Actually, on that note, I do have another demo I've been working on using VS Code vulnerabilities. And I actually went to go and install it in my local environment, install the extensions that cause them this week, and realize I probably shouldn't be doing that because one of the vulnerabilities in particular gives you access to your Mac password file. Anyway, that's a whole other talk. Ended up installing OS X inside of VM, which was running on OS X. Anyway, whole other talk. So I'm going to be using for this first demo, and then we'll switch over to the AWS pipeline one, and I got one in there. But this first demo, I'm going to be using the Node version of Goof, which is our vulnerability demo app. You can try this at home. The vulnerabilities in question, including the image magic, is they're all available, and you can install them, run them, depending on your different configuration setups. The one in particular we're going to be looking at tonight is a classic cross-site scripting attack using the marked package, which is this one here. It's using a very particular version, so anything below 0.3.6 is not good. We are actually using 0.3.5, which is that one there. Hopefully you all can see that okay. No one's saying anything, so I'm going to assume yes. One of the things I always like doing, particularly a lot of these ones, like I said, you can see the initial reports. Quite often these tie back to GitHub repos or some type of public reporting system, which then also lets you see how it happened, just to see how did they find that? What is it doing? Anyway, this one in particular, let's just demo it. The marked library is a markdown library. So it's just a off-the-shelf open source markdown library inside the NPM ecosystem. It has some basic sanitization in it, hence the sanitization is true flag set in here. What that does is it tries to sanitize user input. So when a user types something, it tries to pick up particular combination of keywords or key characters and be able to strip that out of the user input, so it doesn't hit any of the back-end processes. Usually they're running some type of regex to try and match that, or anyone here love regex? Yeah, usually it uses some type of regex to be able to, oh yay, thumbs up, Jeff. To be able to match the user input to pick out all the bad things, but sometimes there's some ways around it. I've actually done this as part of pen testing when deploying apps as well, but anyway, let's get on with the demo. So it is basic markdown, is a bold statement. This is just a to-do app, so it's just going to output the input that I put in or that another user's put in into the actual demo, into the code itself. As you can see there, yes, that was another pun. There is another one coming, but we'll get to that. One of the things you can do with Markdown as well, of course, is links. So doing something like that, for example, that's just going to produce a link, which is, I mean, I know where that's going to go because you can see it in there. But what we're looking for here is a XSS attack. And I have picked up something like this before, or found a vulnerability inside an application doing something like this before, which is basically injecting JavaScript into the user input. Now, of course, if the sanitized true flag inside my code is working right, it's going to be able to pick that up. So if I put that in there, you can see it kind of strips it out there. One of the ways we can get around that, though, is by URL encoding some of the characters, because again, we're trying to get around the regex or trying to get around the library logic to sanitize that input. And we should always make sure devs always sanitize your input. Anyway, that's a whole other talk on itself. So trying to do something like that, for example, it's able to identify the characters being inputted. So what I'm basically trying to do from an attack point of view is work out a way to get around that particular part of the library. And so often what we see attackers do is continually try to get around that by continually injecting, well, different character sets in to see what they get around. So in JavaScript, this is something we can use. This is relevant. No, I was going to go there with a pun, but I couldn't think of one. Anyway, normally I do, but anyway, tonight I do. So yeah, using this as part of the injection string then outputs back into the user's browser, and it might actually do something. So that one actually works, which is actually the vulnerability. Like injecting this or any type of document is able to get around that sanitization and built into that library, and it can put something in that makes this box alerting. The one time I have actually done something like this in the field, total gray hat, always report to the organization that you find something in. Yep, HTML entities is something very similar to that, where remember this 25 words or less apps, Facebook? Yeah, there was a big thing in Facebook. I did a heap of them in digital agency days. There was something we'd outsourced, and they weren't sanitizing their input, and I did tell them, but they didn't fix it. But yeah, you were actually able to do a redirect. It was a frame, and it's basically just worked through an iframe. So you just did a redirect on the parent site. You could redirect anyone to anywhere you wanted, essentially, which is really bad from a usability point of view, because, well, that's a way to make unsafe users. Anyway, let's go to the next demo. So ignore the one that I prepared earlier, because that's still really good there as my backup, because you never know. No, I actually can't delete it until I have another one in there, which I think might be a feature or a bug, not sure. Verdict's out. Anyway, I'm going to set up a new one though, or relatively new one. There's some bits in here I did prepare earlier, because a lot of the times it's part of the code pipeline deployment, which makes some nice seamless, like it makes a nice CI/CD from a GitHub repo or from AWS repos. It's able to continually deploy, makes a nice CI/CD service, which is really cool, because you can automate some stuff. And I, as a DevOps, like, I love automation. It just makes our lives somewhat easier, as long as you get it set up right. Anyway, I'm babbling. Test app 2, because I'm already using that other one. I'm gonna set an existing service role, because I've already got one set up. But yeah, I mean, I could have set up an entirely new one. And I'm just going to deploy with that. GitHub version 2. So I'm going to pull in from a GitHub repo what I've got in here using my build spec file, which looks very, very, very much like that. Nothing overly complex. It's just using runtime Node.js 14, and artifact files are like there's not really a whole lot in there, but essentially this app is straight from the AWS code sample tutorial or documentation. So just wanted something really easier to deploy. This is published publicly, so if you did want to try it yourself at home, like, feel free to clone it and use it yourself. Package side of things, it's got nothing in there, so no dependencies, no libraries. But we're just going to deploy, as you may have guessed, to Electric Beanstalk, which again is just straight from the AWS app. Anyway, GitHub version 2, because version 1 is not quite, well, it's being depreciated. I've already got my GitHub set up, which it just pulled in, yes. And I'm just going to grab my repo as part of the deployment. And we just want the main branch. There we go there. I'm just going to use the code pipeline default output artifact format. Why was that such a tongue twister? Thursday night. And then build provider is just, I'm just going to use AWS code build. It's probably going to give me, a project name, which is pretty good. I can add environmental variables in here, but I don't really need them. And I kind of just need a single build as well. And then I'm almost done to the deploy stage. I'm just going to use AWS Electric Beanstalk. And I've already got an application set up, and the environment name's already set as well. So I'm going to click through that. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now, the worst part is waiting for this thing to deploy. There we go there. See, this bit always, even when I am deploying like production ready apps, I'm always like watching this going, please deploy, please deploy. But essentially what this is doing here is grabbing from the source. Yeah, there we go there. Oh, yay, we like the green ticks. It's then building it in AWS code build. And any second now, no, usually this takes like a minute or two. Which is, I mean, it's really simple code. It should be ready now, right? Remember when this infrastructure used to take so much longer to deploy, And now like it takes maybe a minute and a half, and I'm still like, come on, we want it now. But I want it now. That will deploy. Of course, that's the moment when you get that really bad red cross. Anyway, so it's building it inside AWS Code Deploy, which is up here on the actual steps. And then we'll kick that off into EB, which is usually DUSA. Yes, which will finish any second now. I should do another demo while we're waiting. No, it shouldn't take that long. Oh, wait, you know what I will do? So this is, you may have noticed my fancy video scene. So I have a whole bunch of these, hence the days are in now with the fancy video streaming. Anyway, I set this new one up during the week and I just want to take it for a spin while it's doing that. Oh, and it just finished. Oh, I'll come back to that. Let me switch back to Cyberpunk. We'll come back to that at the end. We'll save that for the end. I don't want to lose anyone. You'll see why when you want to do it. So then that's going to deploy to EB, which should be finished any second now. See, I should have done the other thing. Anyway, there we go. Yeah, usually that one doesn't take too long. And the thing I love like the most about Elastic Beanstalk, particularly for really light apps like this, is it's just so easy to deploy, particularly with a CI/CD setup like this. But also, it's, well, as the name suggests, it's really elastic. So it's got all the load balancer and stuff built in there. And for single page or single page apps or single use apps, like it's really easy to deploy. So I'm going to switch over to EB and then see my deployment URL, which is hopefully in there. There it is there. And then there we are there. So that is actually deployed. Now, one thing we can do, and one of the things I really like about setting up pipelines like this, is I can add in different gates as part of my deployment. So I can put in test scripts to be able to validate and test the code. And I can do the same thing on the security side as well. So as designing redeployable automated infrastructure, like I can put those gates in place so that people can deploy code, and providing it passes the tests we put in place, then we're all good. Again, it's recommended to regularly review those scripts in particular, just to pick up new things you could be doing, things you could be doing better, things that might have missed that you've picked up. So an app gets deployed, passes test scripts, and then security sort of comes in later on and goes, hey, this thing's really bad. Like continually reevaluating that pipeline infrastructure, always critical. So what I'm going to do now is set up, there we go, set up a security gate so that once the source code's grabbed by the process, it'll not get deployed if it doesn't pass a particular security check. So, and you do that literally by you can add a stage in, click action group, selecting providers, which, why is it not moving? Oh, there we go. Of course, I'm going to choose Sneak because you may have guessed I'm from there. Well, you know that I'm from there. But there you can set any different number of gates up in this as well. I'm going to choose source artifacts. You can also select build, but I mean, at this stage in the flow, source kind of makes more sense, but depending where you want to put it in your flow, you can have it reevaluated afterwards. This one, yes, there we go. Should be finished. Why was it asking for GitHub? That's a first. Huh. I don't know why it did that. Live demos, what can go wrong? You know what, I'm gonna try that again. Still over, the first one didn't happen. No, it did, I saw it. Yeah, I don't know why it actually did that. That was interesting. I didn't choose GitHub, did I? Oh, okay, no, it's connecting. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, usually it should come up with that one there. So this basically just works in with my Sneak login and then just gives some authorization in the back end. So I can click continue, and then that will unfreeze in any second. That 502 was a bit of a feature. It's probably because I've already authorized it. So yeah, there we go. Hey, there we go there. So what that's going to do now is add a particular gate as part of that flow. so that it'll run some security checks before it goes through. It's set fairly low, so it's just going to pass stuff through, but you can update that later on. And I'm just going to put an output artifact as reporting and then hit done. Now I can save that, redeploy, yes. And then it's going to go back to that screen and do release change, and it's going to rerun that again, but this time, yeah, there we go there. This time it's going to run the security component of a security gate as part of that, which is probably going to take a few seconds. There we go there. So now what that's doing now, it's scanning at the code level, it's scanning that base code to be able to looking for vulnerabilities, essentially. While that's running, I'm going to jump over here because that's going to take a second. So what that looks like on this side of the reporting, you can see the code analysis here. Now, again, this is straight from the AWS code sample. On the reporting side here, you can see it's actually picked something up. So if I click into that, I was actually surprised to see this particular thing in there because I looked at it and was like, no, it's fine. But yeah, it's actually identified that the HTTP should be a HTTPS, which it is because we should always use HTTPS, which identifies a fairly medium issue. What I'm going to do though, let me switch back to, oops, that was the wrong thing. Because it's CI/CD, it's like automatically going to deploy as soon as I push a change to that GitHub. So what I thought would be fun, I'm just clicking around screens here and realized I closed the wrong one. What I thought could be fun is if we push a change that I know is vulnerable inside the repo. So inside the package.json, if I edit that like so, and go back to my goof demo and grab the package that I know is bad because, well, I know the vulnerability, we can see it pick up on what it does. So if I grab that there and put that over into here, that'll redeploy the code, and then we should see what a vulnerable dependency looks like. So just push that in there. It may get a bit unhappy because, oh no, it's fine. Oh, it didn't like the fact that it hasn't finished that yet though. Now it's a bit confused because it's running twice. So as you can see there, it's just detected the change. It's picking up again from the source and then doing its, well, it was doing its build thing, but I think it may have now stopped. Yeah, there we go. Inbound execution, yeah, it's fine. So now it's pushing it through to, no, it's sitting in, I should disable that. Yeah, I definitely upset it. Let's see what it does. What can go wrong? There's 2 code builds in the pipeline. This should be fun. That is actually the first time it happened. That has happened. Again, live demos. What can go wrong? While that's running there, I'm going to go back to my Sneak console so we can see what that does on that side of things. But that should pick up that vulnerability any second now. Well, actually, the first one's probably going to run, and then the second one, that'll pass, and then this other inbound execution is going to come through. I'm surprised this other one didn't stop, actually. Can I stop that? I should be able to stop that. I don't want to disable the transition because that could end dangerously. Yeah, you can. Is that the stop execution? Ah, yeah, I can, and just re-execute the entire thing. Stop and wait. Stop and abandon. Yeah. Right, I see. Which one was the one I am looking for? I probably should have made note of that. The one I want is 8C2. Stop execution. Yeah, thank you. That was a good idea. See, you always learn something new. I actually hadn't had this come up yet. Stop and wait. No, stop and abandon. Let's stop that one. Hey, there we go. Magic. Thank you. If we were IRL, I would have given you a sticker right now. So now that's going to run through and do a security scan, and like we already know that particular version of the library is vulnerable, so we're expecting it to see that it is actually going to identify that once that actually goes through. What I can do is that's probably going to detect inside my dashboard. So while that's running, in the interest of time, I'll just switch over to here. Yes, you can see there. So what we can see here is there's our initial code issue that's picked up. So that one, the HTTP, but it's actually also identified in the package.json. Yeah, you can see there it's actually picked it up as well, and it's picked it up for a number of different reasons, which was not unexpected. But it actually tells you the number of versions that it's actually fixed in. You can actually fix this in like directly, automatically as part of that deployment as well. So as part of the code pipeline, you can identify it, push a fix through, and then push it back through your test scripts and be able to retest your code, because we do love automation. Anyway, you get the idea. We're getting close to time, so I'm going to switch that back, but you get the idea on the code pipeline side of things. Of course, one thing I'm not covering tonight, which there's a lot of really cool, really good write-ups and videos and talks on, is IAM and securing the stack. In particular, I'm also going to mention here is also setting the right permissions on your bucket infrastructure. And that is a whole other talk for a whole other day. Because one of the other things we see consistently is security around permissions on container buckets, containers. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Why can't I switch back to my Prezzo? Hey, there we go. All right, I'm going to switch back to slides. Just got a few more to go through, and then I can tell some more dev jokes. Actually, I was going to wrap up. My mouse pad's going flat. Anyway, there's a full write-up on this in our blog. We also integrate with, well, every cloud's pipeline service. I was looking at the write-up today on Azure as well, but yeah, we've basically integrated into pretty much everything. We actually have really strong integrations into the Atlassian stack as well. So if you are looking to do some security as part of your gate control, check it out. Literally what we did tonight, I was just using free tier. So super easy to use. And we are also in, well, all those various cloud documentations as well, including AWS. That code that I was demoing tonight, the basic code straight from the AWS documentation with then the infrastructure deployment config in there. That's on my GitHub, DeveloperSteve, or I can make it available after this as well if anyone wants it. I'll put it into the chat if anyone wants it as well. Just finally, in wrapping up, make sure one thing I will ask is please do the due diligence on open source infrastructure that you're using. Just be aware of what's being used in your stack, and please don't let anything get a foot in the door with open source dependencies or libraries or infrastructure. And particularly in a cloud native world, your app is way more than your code. Or is the other way I like to look at it, which is always make sure that no, really, what is going on with my laptop today? Uh-oh, I think something's about to die. Anyway, no, yeah, always keep your stack cool. Yeah, it's just, I don't know what it's doing. I think I need to restart. SneakCon 20, just wanted to mention in wrapping up, SneakCon 2021 is coming up. It's multi-region, it is time zone friendly. I actually have a few conferences coming up where I'm up at 2 a.m., but you know, we don't really travel anymore, so yeah, time zones don't exist. But no, SneakCon is time zone friendly. We are looking for call for CFP, so if you had something you wanted to come talk about, please check it out. Also wanted to mention the DevSecOps Leadership Awards from DevSecCon community are currently open. So if you've got someone or a community, maybe this community I've already nominated, just saying, that you wanted to nominate for the awards, they are global. So please get the submissions in. That's like free to enter. So just a nice way to recognize the amazing work that communities like this do. So please get those nominations in. And just lastly, please use your developer DevOps superpowers for good and be excellent to each other. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, DeveloperSteve. Do we have any questions? Feel free to either drop them in the chat. I'm happy to read them out, or unmute yourself and ask away.
Oh, I was going to do the other scene thing. Maybe I'll save that. Wait, I'm going to switch to the water room.
Yeah, there we go. I'm feeling very tranquil and calm right now.
It comes with a caveat. Thank you. All right, I'm going to do it then. I actually set this one up the other day, so you can have a bit of fun. For those that are working from home and doing live stream things, OBS is amazing. If anyone wants to see how I do this, I'm happy to tell them. But you can have some fun, like you can do Gangnam style. Only what makes this better is you can do Spider-Man and then also Thanos. And of course, you can throw a transformer in for good measure because, I mean, they all go together, right? But one thing I did add the other day, now I haven't used this yet at all, but I can rickroll. Anyway, sorry, I just wanted to show someone that.
It's good to know that all those folks exist in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
All in the one scene.
All in the one scene. All right. Any questions for DeveloperSteve before we wrap this one up?
Happy to connect to. I'm literally DeveloperSteve, kind of all the places, except Twitch. Twitch, I'm developer_Steve because, yeah, anyway, there's a story behind that. Never sign up with a corporate email address and leave the company.
We've got one question in the chat there. Where are AWS pipelines under? EC2 question mark?
No, they're in their own section called CodePipelines. So if you go to that amazing taskbar at the top, which I always love because it's so easy to find stuff, you can just search code pipeline and it will come up as a option in your console. Oh, yeah. One thing I always get caught on, make sure you're in the right region. Just saying. And yeah, goes without saying almost. So many times you just leave a thing running and next minute you get a bill next month. Yeah, you just can relate.
Yeah, billing alerts are definitely valuable as well.
Yes.
All right. Well, we might call it there. Thank you very much, Steve. Really appreciate it. All right, let me do one last screen share before we wrap this up. One last thing, our next meetup that's happening next month, we've got Jesse Ludon talking about automating infrastructure governance with Azure policy. Jesse presented really recently at the HashiConf APAC conference, so he's a pretty interesting speaker. If you're doing anything in the Azure space or the Terraform space, definitely worthwhile coming along and having a listen to this talk. That's it. Thank you very much for coming. Stay safe and see you all online in August.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
And rest of the day. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.